You have never made a single decision that wasn't shaped by someone else's reaction to it. None of that is weakness in the way most men think of weakness. It is something more specific. It is a leash, and someone else is holding the other end. The approval loop runs deeper than most men realize. It is not just about wanting to be liked. It is about having handed other people the authority to confirm whether you are on the right track. And once you hand that authority over, every decision, every direction, every version of yourself that you bring into a room is filtered through the question they will never ask out loud, but you are always answering. Do they approve? That question is the most expensive thing a man can carry, and most men carry it every day without knowing it has a name. The approval loop does not start in adulthood. It starts when a man first learns that certain versions of himself produce better reactions than others. He learns that visible effort gets recognized, that agreement is safer than disagreement, that the version of himself that fits the room gets more back from the room than the version that doesn't. So he optimizes, slowly, without deciding to. He files down the edges that create friction. He leads with what plays well. He buries the parts of himself that make people uncomfortable, including eventually the parts that are most genuinely his. By the time he is 40 or 50, he has spent decades curating himself for rooms that will never fully accept him anyway. Because rooms do not accept men. They use them. And the man who has spent his life seeking the room's approval is the most useful man in it, and the least powerful. The Stoics had a specific answer to the approval loop. They called it living according to nature, meaning living in alignment with your own rational character, your own values, your own judgment, not the judgment of the room, not the standard of the crowd, yours. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man has no more right to applause than a flower has to the rain. It may come, it may not. It is not the point. The point is whether the flower grew according to its own nature. Epictetus was more direct. He wrote that it is impossible to please everyone, and that the attempt to do so is the fastest path to losing yourself entirely, not gradually, entirely. Machiavelli arrived at the same place through a different door. He observed that the man who governs himself by public opinion is governed by whoever shapes that opinion. He is not free, he is managed. The only man who is truly free is the one whose direction comes from inside, from a standard he set himself and holds himself to regardless of who is watching. There are 4 specific places a man cuts the approval loop. The first cut is the decision he stops explaining. He makes it. He does not build a case for it. He does not manage the reaction to it. He decides, and the decision stands on its own. The man who explains every choice is advertising his need for validation. The man who does not is advertising something else entirely. The second cut is the opinion he stops adjusting. He says what he actually thinks, once, clearly. And he does not revise it based on how it lands. A man who changes his stated position because the room reacted badly did not change his mind. He surrendered it. The third cut is the work he stops performing. He stops doing visible effort for invisible audiences. He stops making sure people know how hard he is working. He works. The results are the announcement. The fourth cut is the version of himself he stops hiding. The part that does not fit every room. The part that makes some people uncomfortable. That part is almost always the most powerful part he has, and it has been managed out of sight long enough. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple and so much creatures of necessity that a deceiver will always find someone willing to be deceived. That sounds like cynicism. It is not. It is a structural observation about what happens when a man governs himself by what others think rather than what he knows. He becomes predictable. He becomes available to whoever learns what he is seeking. He becomes, in Machiavelli's terms, a man of necessity. driven by external forces rather than internal ones. The man Machiavelli most respected was the opposite. He did not need the approval of the room because he had already decided who he was before he walked into it. He was not performing for the audience. He was executing a plan the audience was not privy to. That is not arrogance. It is the natural state of a man who has done the internal work of knowing what he stands for and stopped putting that up for a vote. If you have spent years editing yourself for rooms that were never going to give you what you were looking for, subscribe. What we are building here does not require their approval, neither do you. Here is what most men miss when they first cut the approval loop. The silence that follows is uncomfortable. When a man stops seeking validation and starts operating from his own standard, people notice. Some pull back, some test whether he means it, some wait to see if he will revert. Because they have seen men declare independence from the room before and then come crawling back the moment the silence became too loud. The answer to all of that is one thing: consistency. Not dramatic declarations, not announcements, not a new version of himself every 6 months when the old approach stops producing results. The same standard, held the same way, every day, regardless of what the room does with it. A man who is consistent long enough becomes a fixed point, and fixed points are rare enough that people eventually stop trying to move them and start organizing around them instead. Be consistent in what you do, and the results will come, not on someone else's timeline, not with someone else's approval, but because the standard was real and the work was sustained. Most men frame the approval problem as a confidence problem. If they just believed in themselves more, they would stop needing the validation. That is backwards. Confidence is not what you need before you cut the loop. It is what you build by cutting it. Every time a man makes a decision without seeking permission, every time he states his position and holds it, every time he does the work without performing it, he deposits something into an internal account that no external source can reach or deplete. Machiavelli understood that authority, real authority, not the kind that is granted and can be revoked, is built through demonstrated consistency over time, not through a single bold act. Through the accumulation of hundreds of small acts of self-governance that eventually become impossible to ignore. The man who stops seeking approval does not become arrogant. He becomes legible. What he stands for is clear. What he will and will not do is known. And that clarity, that dependable, consistent, unmanaged clarity, is the most magnetic thing a man can offer any room he walks into. You already know what it has cost you to seek approval from people who are never going to give it freely, to edit yourself for rooms that accepted the curated version and discarded the real one, to work harder on the explanation than the thing itself, because the reaction mattered more than the result. And what you are building now is the opposite of all of that. Not through a single decision to stop caring what people think, but through the daily practice of making choices from your own standard and holding them without revision, of saying what you actually mean and letting it stand, of doing the work in the dark and trusting that what is real will eventually be undeniable. Because the man who operates that way consistently, quietly, without performing it for anyone, does not accumulate followers or admirers on a timeline he controls, but he accumulates something more durable than either of those things. He accumulates a self that is entirely his own, a direction that no one else set and no one else can redirect, a kind of authority that was never granted and therefore can never be revoked. And the room will eventually organize around that man, not because he sought its approval, but because he stopped needing it so completely and so consistently that the room had no choice but to adjust. So, if you are ready to stop putting yourself up for a vote, you are in the right place, and we are just getting started. You already know what you are. Finally, Ruthless.